One memory I have from my cancer checkups in East Lansing was probably when I was about 4 or 5 years old, somewhere around there. Blood work, labs. I remember we'd get up real early on a day when I'd have to go to East Lansing for a cancer checkup. We'd get up really early, about, I don't know, sometimes 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it would still be, sometimes it'd still be dark by the time we get up. And I remember we had a Cavalier station wagon, and I would sleep the whole way there. And we'd get there, we'd arrive in East Lansing at the campus, and I'd get woke up. I remember my dad would carry me in, or he would let me walk next to him. I'd put my little finger in the belt loop on his pants, because my dad always did that when I was a kid, you know, so he didn't have to constantly hold me. But I remember I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I'm here walking alongside my dad. My mom's on to the left of me, my dad's to the right, you know, and I'm walking in between them. Lab work. That was one of the most memorable things of all my cancer checkups, because I didn't like needles. And now that I'm almost 30, I still kind of don't like needles. But when I was real young, it was the worst. I remember going into the waiting room in the lab and the laboratory, and they used to have this big old fish aquarium that was built right into the wall, and they had some of the biggest goldfish. I mean, but they had goldfish galore. I mean, this was a big aquarium, and I was already tensed, and I knew what they were going to do, and I knew what laboratory meant even when I was 4 and 5 years old, because, you know, the big L word, the LAB word, you know, it's like, oh, that big word that means getting poked with a needle. So I'm sitting there and I'm just watching the goldfish, and I love to watch those goldfish. And then they call my name, Jared. I'm bawling. Before I even get back to the room, I start bawling. I start crying. And Dad always took me because my mom couldn't handle it or something, I don't know. But my dad always took me. And I remember they would pick us, you know, they'd pick a room for us. And I remember I would sit on his lap, and, you know, in one of those lab chairs, and the armrest thing would come down across, and, you know, where you'd have to rest your arm. And I was bawling before the needle even come out of the wrapper. But I seen those bile things, the tubes that the needles go, or the blood goes into, and well, the kind of needles that they would use on me were those little needles with the wings on them. They were the winged infusion needles, and they use those for like the ports and stuff like that. Well, those were also used then. I don't know if they still do it now, but when I was going for my cancer checkup, they would use those for blood work too. And I just never liked needles when I was a kid. And I remember I would put my arm up on the rest, and I'd sit on Dad's lap. I'd be bawling my eyes out. And Dad would tell me, "Come on, big boy, I know you can do this. I know you don't like it. Let's just get it done and over with." And he's rubbing my back and my neck, and, you know, he knew I didn't like it. But I'm sitting there, they wrap the tourniquet around my arm so they can find the vein, and then when they would find a vein, they would take that little alcohol swab thingamajigger and disinfect the area where they're going to put the needle. And it's like, oh, the smell of alcohol. That didn't help me. I cried even at the rub of the alcohol swab. And they would take the tourniquet off and kind of dry off the area where the alcohol was applied, and then they would take that little winged needle out of the wrapper, and I would cry even harder. And the nurse says, "Honey, we haven't even poked you yet, and you're already crying." And I said, "I don't want to do this." You know, I was just a little kid. I was scared. I didn't like it. And she says, well, honey, we'll do this as fast as we can, I promise. And the nurses there were very, very sweet, and I'm sure they still are. They were really awesome. They never got angry or frustrated with me. They were decent with me, and they worked with me. Well, even then, when I was 4 and 5 years old, they called me Jer Bear. That was my nickname. It's always been my nickname. And she would get that needle out, and those little winged infusion needles, they have the tubes attached to them on the ends, so that way when the blood's drawn, it travels through the tube into the bile, into the you know, where they can sample your blood. That was all hooked up, you know, or they would have to put it together anyway. And they would count it off. They would count it off, and they'd say, okay, Jer Bear, you ready for this mosquito bite? No, no. I said, come on, honey, you can do this. And they would count it off all the time. 1, 2, 3, mosquito bite. And I would let a big old scream out when they put the needle in my arm. And then the nurse would say, you're done, that's it, you're all done. And I'd look down at my arm. Dad says, look there, look at the blood, it's going through the tube, look, it's going into the bile, and it's going through the, you know, check it out, man. And he'd be all, you know, just trying to calm me down. And I'd stop crying long enough, I'd, you know, I have the little sniffles going on, and I'd just be sitting there, like, I'm gonna die, they're taking my blood. Honey, no, honey, you're not gonna die. You're not gonna die. Your heart pumps new blood, you're not gonna die. And, yeah, that was one of the most memorable things about cancer checkups. And after it was all said and done, after all that fuss and all that crying and all that screaming, the nurse would look at me and she'd say, what kind of Band-Aid is it going to be this time, Jer Bear? You want Garfield? You want Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, Pluto, Daisy Duck? Well, who do you want, you know? It's all up to you. And most of the time it'd be Mickey Mouse. And they'd put it on, and you know, they'd put the cotton swab thing on and put the Band-Aid on, and I'd be on my way. But I don't like needles. I didn't like needles when I was 4 and 5 years old, and I'm almost 30 and I still don't like them. But that's one of my most memorable times going for cancer checkups in East Lansing.